Chapter 13. Hell is empty. Shen Su stopped and knelt with care. He lowered the gas cans and ducked out from under the ramrod. He cupped a bit of snow and pressed it to the back of his injured neck. The cold was shocking, but it also awakened his mind, which was fatigued in the extreme, nearly as spent as his body. The snow burned at first, but he knew its chill was vital to keeping the swelling down, so he summoned a chosen reaction to the sensation. He remembered his father telling him that the first response a human body had to input belonged to the animal brain, but anything after that could be channeled by the human mind. Pain was simply communication. What Shen Su did with that information was entirely up to him. His neck had stiffened, as he feared it would, and was growing worse by the moment. His head was throbbing, and he realized that despite the cold, he was likely getting dehydrated. He took another handful of snow and bit off a mouthful. He slowly chewed at it, letting it turn to crystal clear water in his mouth, sweet in its coldness. He chose to welcome the sensation. He inhaled the crisp, fresh air. Memories of the sweat and heat, the poisonous stench of the tank's interior, a combination of engine combustion, exhaust, congealed blood, and number three's fecal matter, was still fresh in his mind. This misery beat that misery by a mile. It had been just past midnight on Good Friday when Sergeant Lee shifted into neutral and killed the tank's engine. He and Chang stood and moved to the tail of the hot, fume-choked compartment. Sergeant Lee opened the hatch at the back left sponson and helped Chang and Sue pull number three's body out. They laid the bloody, shit-stained dead man on the ground with as much care as they could. The sounds of the ongoing fight in the trenches echoed to them over the rise, though it seemed to be headed toward a lull. "Do they always fight this much at night?" asked Chang. "I don't think so. Germans must be real angry they couldn't steal the dragon," Li Peng said. "What do we do now?" asked Shen Su. "Wait for the British to tell us where the dragon goes, then find the truck to take us back to GHQ, or walk." "What about him?" asked Sue, looking at number three's corpse. Sergeant Lee chewed his lip. "I think we leave him here. They got plenty of other bodies to bury. One more to throw in the pit won't worry them too much, even if he's a Chinese. I know we're near Arras. I'll write and tell his family where his body got planted." They were all shocked out of the moment as the Hotchkiss MG in the British trenches barked back to life, chattering in bursts. A star shell fired from the British lines exploded above them, and everything was cast in false daylight. The MG kept on as the star shell drifted toward the earth. Then suddenly, over the crest of the hill came a stream, then a torrent of British soldiers racing toward them, terror-stricken, sprinting past the tank and the shocked Chinaman. "Into the tank, go!" yelled Sergeant Lee. Chang jumped up into the hatch, disappearing inside. Sergeant Lee followed. Shen Su heard the engine crank, then it roared to life. He watched the panicked British race past. He leapt into the hatch mouth. As he turned to grab the handle to close it, he saw a line of Germans come running over the ridge, chasing the terrified British infantrymen. A pair of them tackled the hindmost man and took him down, mauling him as they went, animalistic. Shen Su gasped in shock. Su grabbed the handle and began to pull it shut when his eyes were drawn to number three. as the tank slipped into gear and roared forward, nearly dumping Sue out the rear, and the star shell faded to black. Shen Su swore he saw number three's eyes fly open. Then the dragon's treads were spitting mud backward. The horde of Germans was closing on them, and Shen Su was swinging the hatch shut and slamming the latch, sealing them into the belly of their metal beast. Shen Su staggered into his seat and held on for dear life. He glanced up as he heard Sergeant Lee banging the wrench and saw him pointing to the left. Shen Su grabbed the left-hand lever and yanked it down until he saw Sergeant Lee drop his hand to the throttle and roar them forward, again climbing and pitching up, yawing sideways, then finding traction to press on. He could not hear what Sergeant Lee was yelling, but it was directed at Chang. Then suddenly the whole tank echoed with a new sound as Chang pulled the trigger on the Lewis machine gun in front of him. Its staccato roar overwhelmed the Daimler Knight's cacophony. The tank ground to a sudden halt, throwing Shen Su forward. This time he caught himself on the handrails that ran around the engine block. There was the shriek of metal on metal, and then they were going backward. At the sound of Sergeant Lee's banging, Shen Su looked up. Sergeant Lee was pointing furiously to the right. Su grabbed the lever, and the tank spun backward and to the right. Chang stopped firing the MG when they'd gone 180 degrees. Sergeant Lee dropped his hand. Shen Su released the lever, the gears ground, and they leapt forward again. Suddenly, Su heard thumping and pounding on the side of the tank as someone tried to tear the hatch doors off. He heard something above him on the roof, and the realization that he was no longer a member of the Chinese Labor Corps, but a combatant in a war he had only the merest understanding of, came over him. And he felt as thoroughly outmatched as his uncles must have when they realized the martial artistry of their fists and feet, their spears and halberds, were no defense against the Lee Metfords, Lee Enfields, and Lee 1895 rifles of the Western world's armies. He saw Sergeant Lee directing Chang, who took over with the throttle, pushing them forward. Sergeant Lee stood, then moved through the tight compartment and into the side sponson that held the 6-pound cannon and the Hotchkiss MG behind it. He put his shoulder against the butt of the Hotchkiss, looking through the targeting slit in the armor, squeezed the trigger, and brass cartridges from its bullet strip began clattering onto the floor as their cargo tore out into no man's land. When Chang screamed, somehow it reached Shen Su's ears. Just as he glanced up, the tank came to a sudden halt as the engine stalled and died. Shen Su saw Chang lean back in terror. Then the tank was being overwhelmed by what seemed an army of boots running on top of it, banging on the roof. A screaming storm aimed down at them in languages Shen Su had never heard. There was the crunch of rending metal as the hot exhaust pipe that ran along the roof was bent up and torn loose, and Shen Su knew the end had come. As the din grew to a fever pitch, and the sense that they were being dragged down into the earth felt like a physical reality, that the very skin of the metal beast was about to be ripped off its bones so that whatever was outside could come in and devour the soft, warm Chinese men inside it. A new sound joined the terror. It was the ping of machine gun bullets flying in and stitching the tank from fore to aft. And then the monsters tearing at the hull were leaping off the tank, running toward whatever fools had decided to challenge them, fools certain that their bullets would vanquish the unarmed men now running at them, violent and deathless, their unfallen numbers overwhelming. The now silent tank sat forgotten for the time being. The MG in the distance barked one last time, then ceased. Some screams echoed. Then the battlefield went silent, and the only thing Su, Chang, and Li Peng heard was their own breath. Chang tried to speak. What is happening? Shh! Sergeant Lee held his finger to his lips. They all listened, intent. Sergeant Lee moved with care to the front of the tank, cupping his flashlight. He stared out through the forward view slit for a long, long moment. Then he climbed over Chang and went into the right-hand sponson. He looked through the 6-pound cannon's gun sights, scanning the terrain, then repeated his search at the Hotchkiss. Satisfied, he waved Chang and Shensu to him, again putting a finger to his lips, demanding stealth. Chang and Shensu joined him as quietly as they could. "What is happening, Sergeant Lee?" Shensu whispered. Li Peng whispered back, "I don't know. We were getting attacked by Germans and British too, like crazy men gone berserk." He ran his fingers through his sweaty hair, shaking his head, recalling driving the tank through and over them. "Here's what we're gonna do. A dumb rabbit in the clover sees the hawk and runs. The hawk sees him move and swoops in for the kill, eh? We're gonna sit here quiet as a smart rabbit and wait for that hawk to fly away. Then we're gonna run. Not another word until the sun comes up and we get the lay of the land, right? We sit in our chairs and keep our fucking mouths shut tight." Shensu and Chang nodded in agreement. They all eased back through the tank to their respective seats and settled into them. It was 19 minutes past midnight. Dawn was 6 hours away.